So a couple days ago, I did a video about what was it? Douglas Murray, and I forget whether somebody sent me the video, whether I came across the video. I know it was over there on that red London. What is it called? London something. I forget what the hell it's called. London Real or London something. Anyway, it's like the London version of PragerU. I think I said it in the video that I recorded previously. Um, and it was talking about white privilege, and Douglas Murray started the conversation off hinting at IQs. You know, the idea that we just have to face the fact that white people have higher IQs than the Negroes and, other people of color, right? But even though Jared Taylor thinks that Asian people are smarter than white people. But I began following, or not following, but just glancing at some videos that had to do with, IQs and race, and this is the classical talking point that white supremacists often push. And I left a couple comments underneath a couple of videos. I think there was like a Sam Harris video. He's on the IQ tip, or has a couple videos where he's talking about the IQ. And apparently I shook the beehive, or the hornet's nest, because I awoken some white supremacists who then proceeded to respond to me. And so now I have this guy who's a self-proclaimed white supremacist who wants to engage me. I guess he came over and listened to some of the videos that I had, and I'm assuming, because this is typically what happens, oh, this is one of the smart Negroes. Let me address him and flex my intellectual superiority over this Negro. Finally, a challenger, right? So they get all titillated and then want to engage me. So he's engaging me, and this is me engaging him back. So he says to me that, again, reinforcing basically the videos that I was watching, which is that white people have greater IQs, and that the reason why white people are ahead is because of white people's bigger brains and greater IQs and all that stuff, right? And the part that really irritates me is this idea that white people conquered Africa purely through their intellect. Like as though it was a European king and an African king who sat down at a table and said, whoever wins this chess game will rule the world. Like as though that's the way that it went down. No, it was through rape, pillage, plunder, savagery, murder, and mayhem. That's what it was through. So I say again that if white people want to assert themselves as, intellectual superiors, then they have to acknowledge and accept the fact that they are equally as savage, or arguably the most savage of all peoples on planet Earth, with their weapons of mass destruction and everything else. And they can't sit there and in one breath say, oh, we're intellectually superior, but then not acknowledge the savagery. Oh, we create weapons of mass destruction because we have the intellect to create the weapons of mass destruction, but nothing can be said about the fact that we take our intellect and we create weapons of mass destruction. It's not like they're out here, using their intellect to solve world hunger, right? Or to go out here and solve world diseases and shit like that. It's focused on, as long as we maintain power, as long as we maintain this order and this structure. The part that gets me, right? As long as we stay ahead, that's really what it comes down to. The part that really gets me is, it's like, I'm in agreement with a lot of white people when it comes to, example, their criticism of Islam. Like when Muslims come over and they're like, Islam is a religion of peace, I'm looking at them sideways just the same way a white person looking at them sideways. I'm like, Islam is a religion of peace, but you running around cutting people's heads off. You running around screaming Allahu Akbar, blowing up the plane, running people over with trucks, shooting up movie theaters, decapitating people. But Islam is a religion of peace. I'm like, yeah, okay, motherfucker. Right. And then even when you talk about the expansion of Islam, you talk to Muslims, they try to act like all of Islam expanded peacefully. Peacefully. Nobody was forced to convert to Islam at the tip of an Aladdin sword. Right? We can talk about the slave trade out of Africa, right? Just enslaving massive amounts of black people and taking them out of Africa through Zanzibar. But again, Islam expanded peacefully, right? Like, what the hell determines which black people get to be converts and then which black people end up being slaves? Like how does that arbitrarily decided, right? But Islam is a religion of peace. And I say the same thing when white people come through and they try to act like, white people expanded their empire and took over the world through pure intellect and peaceful negotiation. It's bullshit. It was rape, pillage, and plunder. Hell, even when you go, and they don't teach you this in school, but go and look at what the British did when they were in India, and the viceroys, and how they had famines and they were starving people, and all the atrocities that took place in India. Or go and look up Leopold II and how Leopold II, all the atrocities that he had committed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or which was previously known as Zaire. Go look that up. It's just nuts the way, some of these people, they come through and they try to, paint this picture of, European benevolence. Right. They want to paint this picture that, no, we're not savage. We don't do anything savage. And you know what it's like? It's like somebody, this is what irritates me about white people as a collective when it comes to these race conversations. White people, in my mind, are like the kid that goes around punching people. And then when the people go to punch him back, he's like, oh, time out. New rules. We no longer believe in violence. No, the law now says that nobody should commit an act of violence, right? So when they talk about black people should somehow intellectualize their way out of poverty, right? Even though white people got to their prominent position of power, not just through intellect, but through rape, pillage, and plunder. You see? Now, arguably, I could even support the idea that, white people had superior military tactics, which speaks to their intellect. I'll give them that. Yeah, they kicked black people's ass all over the place, right? But to say that it was all due to purely intellect and there was no rape, pillage, and plunder is bullshit. Bullshit. I mean, on top of the fact that you can't in one breath say that you were superior military tacticians and then in the next breath say that it was all intellect and there was no violence. How can you be a superior military tactician and yet there be no violence? Again, rape, pillage, and plunder. The biggest problem with the African is the African was too trusting. The African, believed that, his own benevolence would be something that would be exhibited by Europeans. The African was foolish in adopting the gods of the European and then, thinking that Europeans were actually practicing what they preached, as opposed to religion being used as a political tool against black people to get them to subscribe to, a manner of thinking that was not advantageous to African peoples. I mean, they just, everybody's pulling up this evidence of France and how France in the Francophone regions of Africa have over the years since the 60s killed off about 22 African leaders. People talk about, and this is what irritates me with white people. They talk about black people need to stop being victims and black people need to be personally responsible and stop being dependent. Well, every time a black leader has tried to be personally responsible, they've all been assassinated. I mean, if you go back and you listen to a Martin Luther King speech Malcolm X speech, Malcolm X and Fred Hampton, two main people right there, all they were ever talking about was personal responsibility and self-determination, right? That's what they were talking about. But y'all, again, the system of white supremacy had them killed them off or used other black people to facilitate them being murdered, right? Because white people as a collective, historically speaking, in the historical context, I mean, they are masters of deception. To go in there and again send in the economic hitman, go and get, oh, okay, well, this African leader is showing too much, a self-sufficiency, and he's trying to break away from the clutches of our power so that we can exploit, his nation, for, the resources or labor or whatever. And so what do? They take that person out and then they replace them with a more scrupulous, type of black person. In a black person that does not have the collective best interests of black people at heart. I mean, this was even stated in the Caspian report video where he talked about that, where, oh, we'll just give them cars and women and a lavish lifestyle and everything else like that. Even though that may not be what the majority of black people are on. It's just this one dictator. But who put the dictator in power? Who gave them the weapons to be able to usurp the government and have a coup? I say again, African peoples don't manufacture their own weapons. They don't. They did it in the past. They don't right now. So where are they getting all the guns and the ammunition? Everybody wants to talk about Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. Where are they getting the guns from? Niggas don't make their own guns. Where are they getting the guns from? Where are they getting the ammunition from? Somebody's dropping it off. Somebody's going in there. And I bet you $1 million they ain't African, because where are they getting it from if Africans don't manufacture their own weapons? There isn't a country in Africa that is controlled by black people that manufactures their own weapons. But yet it's coup after coup after coup after coup after coup after coup after coup. Right? This bullshit. So, again, when white people come through and they try to pretend like, oh, we really want black people to be self-sufficient so that they're not dependent on white, that's bullshit. I mean, it's what's the word that I'm looking for? I mean, it is the ultimate form of gaslighting. When you call somebody out on something and then they tell you like, oh, you're just imagining things. You're just imagining things. Oh, we didn't do that. And the thing is like, what's so funny is, it's like white people try to make themselves the face of morality, right? You came in Africa, you brought your little white Jesus, and said, oh, you need to subscribe to our Bible and this is the Lord and all these Christian principles and everything else in West Africa. I know that there's a more ancient, Christianity, and it comes from the Book of the Dead in ancient Egypt and all that other stuff. And Europeans got wind of it and they took it and bastardized it and then sold it back to the African. But I'm just saying, it's funny how white people try to establish themselves as the moral compass of the world, but then they see a sign of their intelligence as how they can have their how do I put this? They see as their sign, the utmost or the ultimate form of demonstrating intelligence is how effectively you can engage in deception. So how good of a liar you are is they parade that as, well, that clearly demonstrates that we're just smarter than you. Doesn't it also demonstrate that you're more evil? Right? And this is where black people get all caught up, and why one of the reasons why black people are behind, because black people are unwilling to do the same type of evils unto white people as white people have done unto black people. And not only that, that's white people's biggest fear. Again, going back to we're going to change the rules. I got on top because I was kicking everybody's ass. It would be like if murder was legal for 1,000 years and then white people got the advantage because they were winning, right? And so now they're at the top. And then once they're at the top, once they realize, they think that they've capped out, then they go, okay, murder is no longer legal because we're at the top. Yeah. Spoken like a true member of the dominant society. So in other words, what's said now is, well, the only way that black people can lift themselves up out of poverty and lift themselves up out of the conditions that they are in is intellectually. Even though white people didn't get to their position of power purely based on intellect. They got there based on intellect and rape, pillage, and plunder. But see, black people aren't allowed to go out there and rape, pillage, and plunder. It's almost like what's that white woman's name on Fox News? The Laura Ingraham chick. There's a clip of her where she's just like, well, we won, and that's just what it is. And you guys are just going to have to accept your lot in life, as the second fiddle to us, and that's just the way that it is, right? And so when people talk about, what's unfair and unjust and everything else, like, that's not the world that we live in. It's an apex predator world. May the best man or woman win, right? Survival of the fittest, all that other shit, right? And white people try to pretend like, this is just a natural part of nature and it's survival of the fittest, right? Like they want to compete with black people. They don't want to compete with black people. Every time black people competed within the system, minding their damn business, using their intellect to get ahead, like what you saw with the black communities that were burnt down. It's not like white communities went in there and burnt down nothing. It's not like they went into Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma and burnt down nothing. Oh, they burnt down a whole lot of intact shit. When they went into Rosewood, it's not like they just went in there and burnt down nothing. No, they burnt down a whole bunch of intact shit. When it's not like they went in there in Elaine, Arkansas, just burnt down a whole bunch of nothing. No, they burnt down a whole bunch of intact shit. So they try to paint these pictures like, oh, not only have black people never established anything, but black people are incapable of establishing anything. Then when black people do establish something, they burn it the fuck down. And then they say, oh, well, see, it's because you're incapable of doing things intellectually, right? Or they try to deny the fact that it was even burnt down. Or deny the fact that they went in there and destroyed anything, or come up with some sort of false accusation. Oh, the little black boy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, he raped a white girl, or Emmett Till, he whistled at a white woman, or something like that, so that they can make themselves look like the heroes, like we're out here, caping for the white woman, protecting the white woman's honor, right? So they go out there and they do that, but it's bullshit. I mean, they're just the way that they try to intellectualize their savagery. If black people did unto white people what white people did unto black people, white people would be screaming bloody murder. They'd be screaming foul all over the place. Oh, the blacks are evil and this, right? Blacks are evil, but white people in the history of what they've done is not evil. And the thing is like people talk about white guilt again. If white people as a collective didn't have anything to feel guilty of, why do you feel guilty? You can sit there and say that you don't feel guilty, but clearly you do, which is why you get so mad when certain things are broke up, because the history is fucked up. White people know this. This is why they get in their feelings when people bring it up, because they know if they were in the same situation, how angry they would be. They know it's fucked up. I mean, you could even take monkeys. You ever see like the monkeys, or they got a video clip of even wolves where they do this whole thing where they got to hit a buzzer and then they get a treat and they give them either unfair amounts of treats or different treats. Like one monkey gets like a freaking a cucumber. The other one gets a grape. You know what I mean? And the monkey you should see the monkey that got the cucumber. He was pissed. So the whole idea of recognizing that which is unfair is something that's automatic and innate. It's not even something that has to be learned. If you can have monkeys and fucking wolves that can recognize what's unfair. They got this video clip of the Cap sent it to me. There's a video clip of this wolf, and the wolf, they were giving one wolf a treat and they weren't giving the other wolf a treat for hitting the button, and the other wolf grabbed the button and ripped that motherfucker off. He was like, fuck this motherfucking button. He was growling and everything. He was like, man, fuck this shit. You ain't just going to keep giving him shit, and every time I hit the button, I don't get nothing. This is some bullshit, So, again, when white people try to sit there and they pretend like they don't recognize, that which is unfair, it's total bullshit. That's why they keep making these sort of repent type of movies, like freaking Dances with Wolves, with a white guy. He goes, he's the evil white man, and then he falls in love with the abducted white girl who's grown up as a Native American, and then he adopts Native American culture, and then he switches sides, and then they say he's a traitor to his own people. You saw the same thing in Dances with Wolves. Dances with Wolves, The Last Samurai. You saw the same thing in Avatar. You saw the same thing in what's the other movie that they did this? Enemy Mines. That was from the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Where they had what's his name? The black actor. He was playing the alien, and then they had the white guy, and then the black aliens, or the black guy that was playing the alien. He reproduced through parthenogenesis, so he died, and then he had to open up his stomach, and then he had a baby, and then so this white guy is taking care of this alien baby, and they're in the middle of this alien human war, and then at the end of the movie, he becomes this messiah of the people. Same thing in Avatar. These movies have the same damn thing. Dances with Wolves, same damn thing. It's the same damn thing in all these movies. The only movie, and I've talked about this before, the only movie where the white guy does not get to be the hero and maintain white privilege at the end of the movie was the movie District B9. Where he turned into an alien at the end of the movie. And that movie, actually, the irony of that movie is that movie was about race, because they were treating the aliens the same way that they treated black people in the 80s underneath the apartheid in the Sowetos. You know what I'm saying? Or not in the Sowetos, in Soweto, which is like the world's largest freaking ghetto. So it's just like white people try to pretend like they don't know, like they don't have a conscience, they don't recognize, but yet it pops up in your movies, it pops up in your Hollywood, the guilt that white people have for what was done. And I'm saying not like today's white people did it. No, it's based off the fact that you are beneficiaries of what the previous white people did. And you're not about to give that up. Nobody wants to give up whatever advantages they have. Nobody does. Who wants to give up the advantages that they have? Right. But when you come through with that whole moral compass of what's right and what's wrong, that's where you get that whole tug of war, when you want to stand there and you want to say that you're a good moral Christian and all that, and you believe in white Jesus and all this other shit and everything that it says in the Bible. I've already told black people they need to leave religion, because here you are operating again underneath the mental confines of a religion, and the dominant groupings of society that sold you that religion doesn't even practice what they preach. They don't operate on the principles of Christianity when it comes to you the same way that they operate when they're interacting with one another. And so it is not beneficial for black people to be worshiping Christianity or going out here and subscribing to the image of a God, which is the image of their oppressor, or the image of the very group of people that they should be economically competing against, so that they can be independent and not subject to the rule or the whim or the subjugation or the oppression or the marginalization from white people who are in the dominant mainstream society. It's just that simple. I don't even know why I even have to explain this. And I usually have to explain this to the low IQ white people who are the poor working class, not the intellectuals, not the Illuminati, not the Bilderberg group, not the Trilateral group. The people who don't run the world. See, the people who run the world, they know this. And unfortunately, you got a whole bunch of white people who are poor and working class who somehow think that their whiteness elevates them to the same, not only class, but the same intellectual class of the white people who actually run things. As I've stated before, the ruling whites did not have a system of equality in Europe. It was a system of kings, nobles, and peasants, and the majority of white people in America who are working class white folks are descendants of that working poor. That peasant class, the people living, outside the castle. That is what you are descendant of. Again, if your ancestors were balling out of control in Europe and it was so beautiful and so wonderful and it looked like freaking Rivendell from Lord of the Rings where the elves live in freaking Europe, then why didn't your ancestors stay there? Why didn't they stay there if it was just so awesome in Europe? You want to sit there and you want to talk about refugees and other, Middle Eastern people and black people flooding into Europe. Of course they're going to flood into Europe because Europeans literally took all of the wealth from around the world, all of the free labor, and used that to create the wealth that they have, use the resources to create the cities and the infrastructure that they have at everybody else's expense. So when people come through and they come with their, freaking hate whitey signs and all that other stuff, it's for good reason. It's not like the shit comes out of nowhere. To sit there, for white people to sit there and talk about and try to act like, like they haven't done any evil things. It's so irritating. It's so irritating. When it comes to freaking 9/11, oh, never forget. But then when it comes to like black people and slavery, oh, nigger, get over it. Oh, get over it. That has no impact on today. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. It's just so irritating. So irritating dealing with, these like low IQ white supremacists. I like my smart white supremacists, because my smart white supremacists, they're honest. They're like Jared Taylor. Like, they're who wants to give up power? Right? I'm like, thank you. So we can cut the bullshit, because it's not about merit, and it's not about who's the better performer. You have a strategic advantage, white people as a collective, and they're going to fight to maintain that strategic advantage. So it's not about justice and fairness. It's not about, oh, we're just letting the chips fall where they lay. No. The people who are in position of power are conspiring to maintain that position of power. The other thing that I can't stand and really freaking irritates me is how and I warned black people about this. I warned namely black women about this, because, they jumped on the feminist bandwagon and smashed the patriarchy and all that other bullshit. Okay. Where was I going with this? What I hate about the left is that you have real injustices out here, long-standing injustices out here. You have real inequality out here. Again, going back to those being in position of power, conspiring to maintain their power and maintain their wealth. Now, I don't know what the balance is, when it comes to things. I don't know how to work that through, when it comes to whether we should keep capitalism, get rid of capitalism. Should people be rewarded for their hard work? Like, I think people should be rewarded for their hard work. But you have people who are born into an advantageous position because of the transgressions of their ancestors, the rape, pillage, and plunder. That's like me going to a white person. Okay, I go over their house. All right, I kill them. I steal their car. And then I give that car to my grandson. That white person's grandson, because let's say they had a kid before I killed them, their grandson now comes over to my grandson's house and says, hey, that's actually my car. That was my grandfather's car that you stole. Should my son give that car back to the person that I originally killed and stole the car from? That's the big question. With the way that white people behave, the answer to that is, hell motherfucker no, we keeping that shit. That was a long time ago. Right? So in other words, criminal activity has basically a statute of limitation, right? So you can go out there, rape, pillage, and plunder, and then what? Like after 100 years, you can just say fuck it, and just hit the reset button on the Xbox, and everybody's good, even though you kept all of the wealth or whatever it was that you received from that, right? But not only that, like getting back to the point that I was going to make, if I didn't already make it, did I make the point? About just this whole the whole way that the left has just created this whole situation where now real injustices get ignored. So now when black people talk about reparations for slavery and stuff like that, it somehow gets dumped in the same fucking bin as LGBT, ridiculous, transgenderism, freaking men using women's bathrooms and all that other bullshit. So now the most ridiculous arguments coming from the left, right? Now, is the right gets to be able to make the argument that, slavery, Jim Crow, discrimination in the workplace, everything that black people went to, CIA dumping drugs in the black community, the disproportionate amount of black men that were put on the front lines in Vietnam, et cetera, that all of that, mass incarceration, all of that is as ridiculous as, people running around talking about don't misgender me. Don't misgender me. There's 37 genders. I'm a non-conforming, non-binary, freaking alien, whatever. Like, it's like, really, bitch? Like, really? You know what I mean? Like, so now all of a sudden, all black issues get dumped in that same pot because, irritatingly, a lot of black women and some black men, decided to go out here and form Voltron and try to create this multicultural rainbow coalition with all the other like minority groups. Like, it's like the oppression Olympics. And the stupid thing is black people, one of the oldest groups in America, the most marginalized group in America, well documented, has pretty much let everybody else cut them at the front of the line. And now black people would have to fight to get to the front of the line again, which is only going to create even more and further and greater arguments, because now all the people, now the guy in the wheelchair is going to be bitching like, hey, reparations for slavery, what about me? It'll just be everybody will freaking have their hand. People who got here yesterday, black people done fought in every conflict, every war, that this country has ever had, even when they weren't full citizens. And yet you got people who come here yesterday and they cut to the front of the line. You got the Mexicans. Oh, you got the Syrian refugees. What about them? And real talk, it's because white Democrats, and this is where people on the right are 100% correct, white Democrats have black people on the plantation. And truth be told, white Democrats are just as racist as many white Republicans. They're just as racist. Again, it's the right and the left arm of the system of white supremacy. It's just the same. Black people don't have shit coming. Are black people owed? Absolutely. Are black people going to be given anything? Should they be able to expect anything? Hell to the no. Because power is taken, it's not given. And again, if black people were to go out here and do exactly what white people did for them to get in their dominant position of power, even if I was talking about black people just simply having parity with white people, oh my God, it would be like, oh, we got to do something about the niggas, lock them up, throw them in jail, purge them, whatever. We got to stop this because, it's the 21st century and we just can't have, we're beyond that. We're beyond that. Right? We don't operate like that anymore. Yeah, that's real easy to say and convenient to say when you're in first place. Oh, we don't do that anymore. If you're gonna get to where we are, then you got to do it purely through intellect. You can't do it through force. You can't do it through violence, even though we got here through violence and bloodshed. Even though we're in this very seat because of violence and bloodshed, we are in this position based on just like what did the Russian, the mob boss in John Wick say? You know what I mean? What did he say? He said John Wick laid he said he laid the bodies that created the very foundation that we stand on that makes us who we are today. And that is the system of white supremacy. So again, spare me with the high IQ, low IQ, bullshit and all that other stuff. Spare me with that crap. Because at the end of the day, white people did not get in their position of dominance through just pure intellect. They got there through rape, pillage, and plunder, having the whole world's resources at their disposal, at other people's expense, and utilizing those resources to basically position themselves in the dominant position that they're in. Now, the next transitionary period of humanity is two things. There's going to be two transitions if it happens. The first transition is what the hell's going to happen when everything becomes automated. Who's going to be controlling that? Is it going to look like the Matt Damon universe in Elysium? Right? You know, are we going to have to go to a standard income? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to the poor nations? What's going to happen to the rich? What's going to happen? Okay, that's the first part. Is there enough food on planet Earth? Is everybody are we gonna have to start eating bugs and shit like that as the population explodes? Right? Are we gonna find are they actually gonna be able to figure out this freaking what do you call it? The damn cold fusion. Right? They got all the type of the reactors, you know, they're sitting there, they got the plasma, they're slamming it together, they got the other machine with the lasers, you know, trying to create what is created in the sun. Right? They got the what is it they called it? The Hayden Collider over there in what is that? Switzerland, France border or something like that. Right? I mean, they got all type of shit. Again, all this stuff that came out of the expansionist way in which Europeans took over the world. Now, that's not to say that absolutely no good came out of it. But again, the good that came out of it most certainly benefited white people more than it benefited, you know, everybody else. That's why everybody else is behind. That's why you have, you know, people who are like countries that are now coming up in the game that are like, yo, we don't want your freaking G3 summit or whatever, the global warming thing and everything else like that, because they're trying to get on their feet. They're still operating on coal and everything else like that. They're like, we're trying to catch up to you, right? But anyway, getting back to the point that I was going to make about the other phase, the second phase will be the whole interstellar travel, if that's even possible, which, you know, people talk about faster than light travel. You know, I don't know. It's going to have to be something. People coming up with, what do you call it? Warp drives, slip space, wormholes, something. They're going to have to come up with something. And then you'll just see another situation like you see in the video game Titanfall, you know, where you have inner colonies, outer colonies. People are going to be fighting over resources. You know, you're gonna have white nationalists who are gonna be like, we want a white supremacist. Only white people can go to this planet. It'll be some planet Kepler B 14275. That'll be like the white supremacist planet. They'll go over there, and then they'll probably diverge from the human race and be like some other species of fair-skinned people. And what was funny is like, even if they went to a hot planet that was close to the sun, and all the white supremacists went there, then probably over the next several thousands of years they would become dark-skinned people. Hell, even I see that now with the whole. What's so funny about the whole global warming thing is I'm like, you know, it's funny because you got white people who are the ones that are creating global warming conditions, you know, with all of their industrious nations and pumping all this stuff into the atmosphere and whatnot, by and large, right? And they value their whiteness and white supremacy, and everything is about white power and all that other stuff, but they don't realize that they're Africanizing the planet. I'm like, you do realize it. You're Africanizing the planet. You're the more the ice caps melt, and the more that the like, not only are you going to have mosquitoes moving out of the tropics, right? And white people don't have heterozygote advantage against malaria. Not only that, and all the other bugs that'll come out of the damn tropics, but then you have the whole aspect of, you know, just climate changing and them not being able to adapt to that climate change, you know, because, I mean, let's face the fact, right? I mean, what climate are Europeans indigenous to by and large? The Nordic climates, you know, where it's cold, the Baltics and all that other stuff, right? That's where fair skin benefits you because it's gray like 90% of the year. Well, what's going to happen if the earth heats up? What's going to happen if it's hotter in Europe, and you have you know, malaria moving up into, you know, northern Italy and Switzerland and shit like that? Now what? Now what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, so like they're helping facilitate their own demise and don't even realize it. You know, but anyway, I'm getting too deep. It's just irritating. And again, I have plenty of videos. I got to re-upload them. It's on my other hard drive. So when I get a chance, I'll re-upload them, you know, because my other channel got shut down because, you know, hate speech. Everything is fucking hate speech because the snowflakes is out there. Right. But I got my technology and future advancement and my, you know, views on where things are going. And I do believe that things are going to get worse before they get better. That's I truly believe that they're going to get worse before they get better. And I'm extremely concerned about the African because, okay, now that I'm done talking about white supremacists and white people and all the evil, terrible shit that they've done, we are seriously fucking behind. Seriously fucking behind. Not just financially, but we're behind in technology-wise. We are seriously behind. I'm telling you, if any of these other groups decide, like you got India, they send in satellites to Mars. You got Japan, they go into the dark side of the moon, or is it Japan or China? China going to the dark side of the moon, right? The U.S. wants to go back to Mars and land on Mars and everything. Okay, what's Africa doing? What's Africa doing? And as I stated before, I don't believe in Africa with its multiple countries. It's too diverse. Y'all got to break that shit down into regions, okay? And I don't know. I don't want to sit here and say that English should be the language that everybody speaks. But hell, if that's going to help the Africans communicate better with one another instead of running around with all these different languages so that they can't coordinate shit, then so be it. Let it be English. I think the African Union has already taken care of that. But again, a black woman goes up there, Dr. What's her name? Dr. Okana, Chi Hombori, Quayo. Yeah. Dr. Okana, this is Dr. Okana, Chi Hombori, Quayo. She's up there telling the truth, and then they let her go because she's telling the truth. So like black people, we ain't ready right now. We ain't ready right now. Again, my concern and my fear is, if white people wanted to re-enslave black people tomorrow, they could do it. If anybody wanted to enslave black people tomorrow, they could do it. Yes, it would be very difficult for them to maintain, their moral compass and claim that they're properly oriented and everything. But I mean, you see how nations do. All they got to do is sit there and claim some sort of provocation, and then that gives them a license to invade your lands and then take them over and say that they're preventing extremism and terrorists and everything. There's already tons of groups in Africa right now that claim that we're here to challenge Boko Haram and we're here to challenge, the expansion of Islamic terrorism and everything. And I'm not saying that you don't have Islamic terrorism in Africa, because you do, and they're a problem for other Africans as well. And I wish that they would drop that shit, because again, Islam is not indigenous to the continent of Africa. It is not for black people nor by black people. You go into the Quran, and what was the role of Bilal? What was Bilal's first, when Bilal was introduced to you in the Quran, what was Bilal's position? He was a slave. He was a slave. So that tells you right off top what our historical role was, because we for so long have not been able to get it together. That tells you off top. And this is why people throw the Negroes are just intellectually inferior, this, that, and the third. Right? And I'm saying I might even give them that. But what they're not going to get is they're not going to get the benevolence. They're not going to get the idea that they are somehow morally superior to the African. Fuck out of here. It was the Africans' moral superior which got black people caught up, because black people weren't savage enough and to be able to recognize a threat when they see a threat and respond accordingly to a threat, and let people know that, you're not going to do that here. And those black men who did stand up and do that, and even those black women who did stand up and do that, unfortunately, when they did that, it was already too late. We aren't much different than the Native Americans in the manner in which they lost. Think about it. America has got Thanksgiving. They give thanks to the European coming over to America and whatnot. What does the Native American have to be thankful for? Hell, if it wasn't for, think about it. If the first Europeans that came to Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 or 1609, whenever they came, okay, the Native Americans helped them. They helped them survive their first winter. Just imagine if they never helped them. Imagine what might not exist, or what the all the lives that would the Native Americans would have. So now some people would say that this is just a part of the cycle of life, the part of the world, right? That we're like bacteria on a petri dish, fighting over limited space and limited resources. Okay, fine. If that's what it's going to be, well then fuck it then. Stop trying to tell me about morality and white Jesus and Christianity and Allah and all this other bullshit to try to get me to operate on a principle that you don't even operate on. You operate on savagery. When you see the advantage, you take it. When you see resources that will benefit you, you take it at somebody else's expense. If you got to kill them to get it, you're going to kill them to get it. And yet black people, we running around too scared to step on a goddamn ant because we might not get into the pearly gates of a heaven that was painted for us by non-black peoples and people who aren't even indigenous to the continent of Africa. And who gave us those faiths and those religions so that we would operate on a benevolence that they don't operate on. So again, spare me with the benevolent shit. Like, it's like what Divine Brown used to say. She was like, what the fuck is up with all this good and evil bullshit? This is about winning by any means necessary. What is up with all this good and evil shit? Like, it's the red lightsaber versus the blue lightsaber. Again, nobody else operates like that when it comes to us. Nobody else looks at us and goes, oh, those poor little Africans, let's not exploit them. They say, fuck it, them niggas asleep, let's get them. We're gonna vacuum all the resources we can out of Africa, which is why the Chinese is there, which is why the Russians is there, which is why America is there, which is why Europe is there. Everybody wants a piece of Africa. They've been wanting a piece of Africa. And yet black Africans have not woken up because they too caught up sitting in church all goddamn day, worshiping white Jesus, singing and praying and everything else, not recognizing, the threats that are just beyond their borders. Hell, not even beyond their borders, now within their borders. The self-determination of the African is something that has to be realized. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And white people will sit around and they'll fake like they're black people's allies. Like, oh, we want to see black people. Y'all need to be personally responsible and y'all need to take care of yourselves and this, that, and the third. As soon as black people do that, they get scared. They get, oh shit. Oh shit. They look like they mobilizing to compete against us. Oh shit. And then they start really looking at it for what it is. It's like what I used to tell this white guy. We used to have these intellectual debates all the time. I used to tell him all the time. I was like, white people ain't gonna live black people out of poverty. And he was like, why? Why wouldn't we want to do that? And I was like, because at the end of the day, it's not in your collective best interest to do so. Not if we're talking about tribalism and group economics. It's not in your collective best interest to do that. I was like, if you had, because we were talking about Camden, New Jersey. And I was like, if you had, look, there's no jobs in Camden. The factory shut down, the race riots in 1967. There's no jobs. That's why you see these young men out here selling drugs and everything else. Right? He's all for job creation. I'm like, I'm all for job creation too. But you got to recognize that he was a carpenter. And I had to point out to him, if there was a black carpenter in Camden, and not only that, but the black people had resources to actually refurbish their home or renovate or whatever, they wouldn't be calling you. They would be calling their own people. The only reason that you're getting any of the business that you're getting is because the black people in that community, on the rare occasion that they do have the disposable income to refurbish their home or do anything in there, when it comes to carpentry, is because you're the only one that they can go to. They can't go to their own because that hasn't been established. So while you sit up in here and you want to say that you don't want black people to be these mooches breathing up all the white man's air and sucking up all the welfare and everything else like that, if black people actually had their shit together, you'd have to find another occupation. Or you'd have to go and take your ass and go compete with the other white men that are catering to the white community that you're not catering to, because you're probably one of the shittiest carpenters that there are. So you come over to the black community and provide your shitty ass services to the black people at exorbitant prices. Fuck out of here. It's just bullshit. I mean, it's just bullshit. I don't even know why these white people try this bullshit with me. Then again, I know why they try it, because they assume that they're my intellectual superior. Fucking annoying. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. New Jersey gun laws out.